I remember the day Veronica's brand new luxury SUV ended up dangling nose first from my front gate like the most expensive, absurd lawn ornament I'd ever owned, and the sound it made when the frame hit the steel, that glorious thunk that settled 20 years of frustration right in my chest. The sirens blared, the HOA president screamed, and the tow truck driver, bless his heart, refused to move it until the police took photos. That was the moment I knew the new gate worked exactly as planned, and that chaos, it was exactly what I'd designed. But that kind of chaos doesn't just appear out of nowhere, right? It started 2 months earlier when the old gate, my simple handmade cedar entrance that I'd spent 3 weekends building for some peace and quiet, was ripped clean off its hinges because Veronica decided my driveway looked like free, convenient parking. It was a Saturday morning, the kind where the sun is perfect, the coffee's hot, and peace feels like a living, tangible thing. Then I heard that go-doffel crunch. Metal on wood, wood on gravel, and a scream that somehow managed to carry both utter guilt and supreme entitlement. When I walked out, my gate was split like a broken rib, Veronica's SUV halfway through it, and she stood there shouting that it wasn't properly marked as private property. That's how every war begins, with a single sentence of pure, unadulterated nonsense. I stayed calm, somehow, told her she'd have to pay for the damage, and she just laughed, a high, sharp sound, said, "Good luck proving it," and drove off, dragging a piece of my fence like a parade banner, scarring my beautiful new asphalt. The Highland Creek Association Board, naturally, didn't want to get involved. They issued a meaningless statement saying it was between neighbors, which was their polite way of saying it was all on me. That night, I stood in my driveway staring at the broken structure, and an idea started forming. Not just a fix, but a statement, a declaration. I was done being polite, done playing by rules that only applied when it suited her. If she wanted a gate she'd never forget, I'd give her one. I would weaponize her own entitlement against her. The following week, I called my cousin Ethan, an engineer who once built custom hydraulic barriers for wildlife reserves. He owed me a big favor. Together, we drew up a design that would make even the Army Corps of Engineers jealous. A smart, heavy-duty steel frame disguised with cedar panels to blend in, with a hidden pivot hinge that could swing down like a modern drawbridge trap. It had to look completely normal from the outside, but if triggered by a certain weight pattern, say, a heavy SUV stopping too close, it would release, creating what Ethan called a self-correcting parking deterrent. I called it poetic justice, forged in fire and steel. While we built it, I maintained my neighborly tone, greeting Veronica every time she passed, pretending I'd moved on and forgotten the whole thing. She'd glance over, see the welders, the cement mixers, the serious construction, and roll her eyes, muttering once, overcompensating for a gate. I smiled. If only she knew. The HOA, predictable as ever, sent me a warning letter claiming I was modifying property aesthetics without approval. I responded instantly by attaching the Federal Safety Compliance Certificate Ethan drafted, complete with his company seal and federal classification number. They didn't realize that certificate also categorized the structure as an agricultural security barrier, which, legally, put it completely outside HOA jurisdiction. They went silent, but Veronica wasn't pleased. She began parking her SUV even closer, sometimes just an inch from the property line, as if daring me to react. Once she even left a note on my mailbox. Some people don't belong in communities. I framed it in my workshop. Motivation looks good in writing. When the new gate was finally finished, it was a work of art. Tall steel frame, motion sensors hidden in the posts, a camera feed that synced straight to my phone. But the true magic was the drop mechanism. It was programmed to detect when a large vehicle stopped on the outer sensor pad for more than 5 seconds. If that happened, the hydraulics would release just enough to tilt the ground platform by a subtle 6 degrees, making anything parked there slowly slide forward until gravity did the rest. It wasn't dangerous. It was ruthlessly humiliating. To anyone watching, it looked like the car had simply rolled itself into trouble due to driver error. The first test came sooner than expected. One evening, I came home to find Veronica hosting her weekly HOA planning circle. 6 SUVs lined the street, and one familiar white one stood directly in front of my gate again, partially blocking my entrance. I honked once, twice, no response. From her porch, I heard her sharp laugh. Maybe he can climb over it. That was my cue. I opened the gate remotely and watched the outer platform shift. The SUV tilted, just slightly, then slowly, beautifully, began to roll forward, the front wheels dipping as the rear lifted. It wasn't fast, just awkward enough to make every person on that street stare. The back tires lifted clear off the ground before the front bumper kissed the gravel, suspended perfectly, nose down in a silent salute to the laws of physics. The laughter stopped. I could almost hear the neighborhood gasp. Veronica ran over screaming about sabotage, but the local deputy chief, Officer Hayes, who actually lived 2 houses down, was already there. He'd seen everything. "Looks like gravity," he said dryly. "You might want to put it in park next time, ma'am." I stood beside him, hands in my pockets, nodding sympathetically. Inside, I was performing a silent, triumphant jig. The HOA board arrived minutes later, demanding answers, but I calmly showed them the federal certification letter and the compliance video. The deputy chief shrugged. "It's legal, folks." Perfectly. That night, the story exploded on the neighborhood group chat. Half the residents called it karma, the other half called it genius. Someone posted a slow-motion clip of the SUV hanging like a chandelier. It got more likes than any HOA event that year. Veronica, of course, demanded it be taken down. It wasn't. She escalated immediately, filing a complaint with the county inspector. He ended up asking if he could take a closer look, saying the mechanism was ingenious. By the end of the week, I had 3 calls from ranch owners asking if I could install one on their properties. What I didn't know was that Veronica wasn't done. I caught her pacing on the security feed, phone in hand, whispering to someone. She was plotting. Veronica's second move came 2 nights later under the kind of darkness only people up to no good rely on. The cameras picked up the glow of her phone screen first, then her silhouette creeping toward my gate with a flashlight and what looked like a wrench. She had her son, Kyle, with her this time, the same one who once thought my tractor was public property. They whispered loudly, the way amateurs do when they think they're invisible. I sat in my living room watching the feed, a bowl of popcorn nearby, because when you spend weeks designing a trapdoor gate for a woman like Veronica, you don't sleep through the sequel. She was muttering about getting evidence, telling her son to loosen the bolts so it falls next time. The system was built for this, however. The moment her flashlight beam crossed the main sensor, the gate lights flared to life, bathing her in bright white light like a stage spotlight. Her son shrieked, dropping the wrench, while Veronica froze mid-step, squinting like a raccoon caught in headlights. Then came the voice. I had installed a motion-triggered audio clip recorded in my calmest, most boring tone. "Warning. Trespassing detected. Law enforcement has been notified." She screamed so loud I thought she'd wake the whole block. The irony was thick enough to spread on toast. Officer Hayes' cruiser pulled up 5 minutes later, lights flashing. "Veronica, it's 2 o'clock in the morning," he sighed, rubbing his temples. "We've talked about this. You're trespassing again." He pointed to the camera above her head, then to the wrench lying on the ground. "Looks more like vandalism to me, ma'am." After a short, humiliating lecture, he escorted her back, warning her that the next time, she'd face real charges. The next morning, she filed a mass complaint titled "Unsafe Gate Hazard Near Lot 47, claiming I was running a military-grade contraption. Half the neighbors laughed. The other half said I should have just used a chain gate. But none of them realized that her attempt to humiliate me gave me free advertising. By noon, a local YouTuber covering weird homeowner inventions reached out. When his video went up, he called it "The Gravity Gate Meets Karma," and it got 250,000 views in 2 days. Veronica was livid. She demanded the HOA force removal, but when I showed the board the engineering diagrams, they laughed. She stormed out, muttering that she'd take it to court. The very next day, a city inspector arrived. He walked around it twice, squatted, took pictures, and finally said, "This thing's built better than half the municipal barriers I've seen." He signed off with a grin. Veronica, watching from her driveway, looked like she'd swallowed a lemon whole. The gate hit 1 million views on TikTok, the Karen catcher. Her lawyer left me a voicemail demanding I cease the dissemination of defamatory content. She wanted someone to blame. Officer Hayes texted back, "She's grasping still. Don't worry, you're fine." 2 nights later, a moving truck showed up outside her house. She wasn't leaving. She was expanding. She began unloading construction equipment. a portable fence, concrete blocks, and a pile of signs that read community access parking. She was about to start her own parking area right across from my property line, turning her lawn into a battlefield just to provoke me. She smirked at me across the street, thinking she was one step ahead. What she didn't realize was that I was recording everything, because sometimes karma likes to have a director's cut. The irony was so heavy it could crush steel. Guests from her HOA parties started using her lot, crowding my access. I stayed patient. Revenge isn't about reacting, it's about timing. When Ethan stopped by to check the hydraulics, he joked, "Man, you should make it coin-operated. Let people pay to watch cars slide." That's when it hit me. What if I gave Veronica's parking lot its own attraction? We installed a second hidden pad beneath the outer edge of my driveway, wired to the same smart system, but with a twist. When triggered, it would send a harmless, startling air pulse, the nudge, through the ground, lifting one wheel just an inch, enough to make any driver panic and move fast. The first test subject arrived the following Saturday during her HOA spring social. I watched through the window. The moment an oversized pickup stopped right on the edge, I tapped my phone screen. A faint hiss from the ground, followed by a slow tilt of the truck's rear end. The driver jumped out, shouting, "My truck's moving." Veronica ran over, screaming that it was probably just the gravel settling. But when the next SUV started to tilt the same way, people began backing away. Someone shouted that there must be a sinkhole. Within minutes, half the crowd had scattered. Veronica looked straight at my gate, her face a priceless mix of disbelief and horror. Officer Hayes showed up, sighed, and ordered her to shut down the lot until it could be inspected. She looked like someone who just realized the enemy wasn't breaking rules, they were mastering them. The next day, she sent a mass email claiming I was operating experimental machinery. The board reluctantly scheduled an emergency meeting. When the day came, I stood up calmly, played the short clip of her trying to vandalize the gate at 2 a.m., and explained how every mechanism was designed for safety. If she's worried about cars moving unexpectedly, I concluded, maybe she should stop parking them where they don't belong. The laughter that followed filled the room. Veronica turned scarlet, screamed something about lawsuits, and stormed out, slamming the door. The tide had turned completely. She wasn't the queen of the neighborhood anymore. She was the spectacle. A week passed after the HOA meeting, and the neighborhood settled into an eerie calm. Veronica had gone completely quiet. I knew her too well, though. Fear only made her desperate. It was a Thursday morning when I noticed her next move. A glossy flyer taped to my mailbox. Community fair presented by the HOA, listing the fairgrounds as the shared green space directly across from my property. She was turning her personal feud into a public event. Sure enough, by Saturday, the street was packed with tents, food trucks, and a bounce house dangerously close to my sensor pad. Then I saw it. A small orange cone positioned directly in front of my gate with a handwritten sign. Temporary pedestrian zone. No entry. She'd actually blocked my own driveway. I walked over calmly, took a picture, and smiled. Safety first, I said. An hour later, a delivery van tried to park right against my gate. The moment the van rolled onto the sensor pad, the system pinged a warning. The driver felt the slight drop and yelled. Veronica started screaming that my gate was attacking the van. Officer Hayes arrived, rubbed his temples, and said, "Veronica, if I have to file one more false claim from this street, I'm billing you personally." She stomped toward my gate, yelling that she would prove it was dangerous. She grabbed the latch and shook it violently. The sensor picked up her weight, the hydraulics adjusted, and the latch released with a soft click. The gate swung open by itself, perfectly smooth, silent, elegant. Veronica stumbled backward, shrieking, "See? It's possessed." "No," I said, leaning against my truck. "Just automated." The crowd roared. She'd lost the crowd. The next day, she filed an official complaint with the county, claiming I was operating heavy mechanical structures without an industrial license. The county inspector returned, checked everything, and chuckled. "You're more certified than most construction sites," he joked. 2 nights later, I found out what she was really planning. She filed the lawsuit, but that wasn't enough. A week later, during a heavy rainstorm, Veronica made her final, spectacular stand. My phone buzzed with a live feed alert at midnight. There she was, drenched, standing in front of my gate with a sledgehammer. She started shouting, but the thunder swallowed her words. She lifted the hammer and swung it against the gate. Sparks flew as the rainwater connected with the motion sensors. The gate's emergency light system triggered instantly, blinding her in a flood of red and white. She screamed, stumbled backward, slipped in the mud, and fell straight into the ditch behind her fence. The live stream caught everything. By morning, the video had spread everywhere. The sheriff called me personally to say she was fine, just bruised pride and a sprained wrist, but she'd finally agreed to drop the lawsuit and seek counseling. The HOA issued a statement thanking the sheriff for maintaining peace, without naming names, but everyone knew. A week passed. Then late one evening, just as I was locking up the workshop, I heard tires crunching on the gravel. I stepped onto the porch. The headlights switched off, and Veronica stepped out. No phone, no audience, just her. Her hair was a mess, and her voice, when she spoke, wasn't angry anymore. It was small. "I came to say something," she said. "You won." I still didn't speak. "I'm leaving. Selling the house, moving to my sister's place upstate. I can't live here anymore." I nodded once. "Good luck," I said. She got in her car and drove away without another word. The silence that followed was different this time. Peaceful, final. I thought that was the end. But one night, I found out just how deep her bitterness ran. I found hundreds of metal nails scattered like landmines across the entrance. My camera system recorded her, in her robe and slippers, dumping a bucket of nails like a cartoon villain. I swept them up and dropped the bucket on her doorstep with a sticky note. "You dropped these." She escalated again, filing baseless inspection reports and even ordering 50 pounds of fertilizer in my name, paid in cash, probably hoping I'd lose my temper. The sheriff sighed. "She's making this too easy. Every time she touches something, she leaves fingerprints." That night, I decided to end it for good. Not with retaliation, but with exposure. Ethan helped me compile every clip, every photo, every police report into a single video, cleanly edited and narrated in a calm tone. We titled it, "When Boundaries Break, A Neighborhood Story." It wasn't a hit piece. It was a timeline. It hit 1 million views in a week. My gate had become a symbol, not of conflict, but of control. When Veronica saw the video, I expected another explosion, but what came instead was silence. Real silence. Then, late one evening, the gate camera pinged. My heart skipped. It wasn't Veronica. It was her son, Kyle. Older now, gaunt, his eyes hollow. He looked straight into the camera, placed something on the ground, and walked away. Lying there was a small wooden box. Inside, wrapped in cloth, was a single brass key and a note that read, "She's gone. I thought you should know." I sat there, unsure whether to feel relief or sadness. The war wasn't just about fences. It was about pride. And Veronica's pride had finally met something stronger than it. Her own reflection staring back from the mess she made. The gate had never been about keeping people out. It was about protecting peace from chaos. I realized the gate had finally done its job. It taught me when to let things go. The weeks after her departure were calm. The house was sold to David and Claire, a decent couple who had watched the viral videos and wanted quiet space. I thought everything was over. But one night around midnight, the gate camera pinged. My heart skipped. It wasn't Veronica. It was a small moving van pulling up to David's driveway. Then from the corner of the camera's frame, a familiar small, fast figure emerged. It paused by the mailbox, placed something on the ground, and slipped away into the darkness. I ran outside. Lying there was a ceramic garden gnome painted bright pink, holding a sign that read, "Still watching." I called the sheriff, who promised to look into it. I stood at the gate that evening, waiting. Maybe she was gone for good. Maybe the gnome was her final message. Or maybe somewhere out there, she was still plotting another round. But this time, I wasn't worried, because the gate had already proven itself. Whatever she tried next, it would be ready. And so would I. This was a story about boundaries, not walls. And if you've ever had to deal with someone who thinks the rules of decency don't apply to them, you know the truth. Sometimes, the only way to find peace is to build a beautiful, technological, utterly unyielding boundary. Did Veronica deserve to lose everything? Was my poetic justice too much? Let me know your thoughts. Where does the line between defense and escalation truly lie? Drop your comments below, and thanks for watching.